in the road. We did quite a bit of that this fall, Oak and Vets, and replacing some sidewalk and some curb there. And that's all done. So what does that do for us now? We're starting to transition into our winter maintenance and winter projects. So what do we do to get ready for that type of stuff? If you're wondering, one of the first things that we start to do now is we transition our construction trucks and we start putting plows and wings on and sideboards for hauling snow. Christmas decorations, believe it or not, have to get ready for the holiday parade coming up in 3 weeks. And so we move the planters off of South Central Ave that are in the center median, and we put them out on the side streets now for the winter. We got to put out sandboxes. We got to calibrate salters yet, grade alleys, and our other gravel roads, a few gravel roads that we haven't in the town yet. After the parade, we have to pick up benches and trash cans along Central Avenue. And we have quite a few new guys, so we started our plow route map to assign guys to plow routes, and we spent a day with those guys to get them acclimated and on how to run a plow truck and run the routes and put out stakes for high manholes so they don't hit them and wreck their plows or wreck their trucks or wreck the road. So that's what we're up to. Things are wrapping up nicely. And with that, I'll entertain any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Chris? Sounds like very thorough, so
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Dan Connect, Director of Public Works. Dan.
Thank you. Tom did the update including your agenda packet. I just wanted to hit the highlights with 3 active projects that are also winding down as we speak here. The first one would be Blodgett Street from St. Joe's to Wood. That was a sewer water work, street reconstruction. The grading and graveling and ditch restoration is continuing up the street. That should be done this week. And we expect paving to be completed as planned yet this fall, although we don't have a date on that yet. Should be all wrapped up before the snow flies. The second project to mention is the pipe bursting project on Lincoln Avenue. This is between Blodgett and the lift station just north of Briarwood. All the pipe work is done. They're working on some manholes yet, and then starting to the restoration for the pavement patches. We expect American to get at those pavement patches yet this week. I think on Thursday when they're in here doing the other street that Chris mentioned. And then the third project that's winding down is our city subdivision project. Curb and gutter and all the other concrete work is done. First lift of asphalt was placed over the weekend, so it's really looking really nice right now. We have the electric utility and the gas company putting in electric and gas mains to serve the subdivision, and then final restoration going on. Josh mentioned earlier that we'll likely have 2 building permits yet this fall to get some basements started in there, and then a lot more planned for next spring. So it's all moving along nicely. Any questions on those 3 projects?
Anybody? Okay, thank you, Dan. Number 5, approved purchase of tractor mower / snowblower for the street division, presented by Chris Hawley, Street Superintendent. Chris.
Thank you. One of the things in the 2021 equipment replacement fund was to replace one of our John Deere tractors. It's 5 years old right now, and it does a really good job mowing, but when we get into the winter season, it's constantly in for repairs with the blower and the broom. The reason for that is chain driven thing, and we're always, chain is popping off, or we're breaking chains, or we're constantly fixing the snow blower. In the past, when the snow blower gears would go out on it, we could buy the gear. We can't just buy the gear anymore. We have to buy the whole housing, and it just doesn't make any sense to keep the machine anymore because it's costing us more money than it's worth. So we've demoed this Ventrac tractor that you see before you tonight several times. We demoed it in the winter season, and we demoed it earlier this summer also. It's a very unique piece of industrial type equipment. It'll mow steep like a 50-degree slope with the duals on it. We actually took it out on Peach Avenue, where the Veterans Parkway overpasses, and the guy didn't have the duals on it, and he still mowed that area. So that's kind of a unique piece of equipment to be able to mow that area. We demoed it out on Hume Avenue, back by the advanced disposal site out there, and we put it in one of our wet ponds out there. Basically, it's really wet, and we had the duals on it, and it mowed it no problem. We tried to get it stuck, and we couldn't get it stuck. If you guys remember, we were looking, and we went to Wisconsin Surplus, and there was one out on sale for that. It went a lot higher than we were anticipating. We were hoping to get a good deal on it, so it kind of fell through. We got to a point where we said, well, it's not worth bidding anymore, so we quit bidding on it. Since then, in September, they came out with actually a new model. It's got better LED lights, a roll bar. It's got a new hood, front access panel, a new gauge cluster on it, and most important, it's got a larger, better hydraulic system. So the hydraulic system is what will run the snow blower and the broom for the winter season coming up here. So with that, we went out to bid. We asked for quotes from 3 different guys who sell this equipment, and they're all really, really close because we use Sourcewell for our numbers. And Eau Claire Lawn and Equipment came in a couple $100 cheaper than the guy from Elm Grove. And so with that, we recommend the purchase of the Ventrac tractor and accessories from Eau Claire Lawn and Equipment for $51,374.40.
I would entertain a motion. Mr. Rosendich, second. Mr. Varsho, questions? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Chris. Number 6, approve consultant selection for the wastewater facilities planning, presented by Sam Moore, wastewater superintendent. Sam.
Thanks, Tom. The DNR in Wisconsin requires that every wastewater plant have a facility plan on file, and ours is about 24 years old right now, so they would like us to update that. And so I was back here in September, and we got approval to send out proposals, requests for proposals to 3 engineering firms that we do business with on a regular basis. And we did that, and the bids come back on October 21st. We only received 2 bids. One of the firms was just too busy. There's too much work out there right now. They didn't feel they could do it justice and would rather not bid than to get the bid and do a poor job. So the 2 firms that did bid were Strand Associates out of Madison and MSA Professionals out of Baraboo. There is an MSA office also here in Marshfield. Both firms can do all the work. We got staff, 7 people from staff together from the engineering and wastewater to look over the proposals. We did things a little different. We had them submit their proposal in one packet, then another packet was their price. And staff went over the proposal to figure out which one had the best proposal. And for a number of factors, they were all very close, but we chose Strand had the best proposal for what we were looking for. And then when we opened up the cost, Strand was $15,000 cheaper as well. So with that, wastewater and engineering staff would recommend accepting the proposal from Strand Associates of $84,865 for the completion of a facility plan and the wastewater division, and have staff execute a contract.
Motion, Mr. Fisher, second. Mr. Rosendich, questions? Okay, all those in favor of the motion then say aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
Number 7, consideration of improvements on Fair Association property as part of the 17th Street Reconstruction Project, presented by Dan Connect, Director of Public Works. Dan.
Gonna get the map up here before. Okay, when Tom was here 4 weeks ago now, presenting the plans for 17th Street, he mentioned that staff was looking at some improvements along the Fair Association property on the north side of 17th Street. This would encompass the hockey building as well as the horse barn area. And there's two purposes for looking at improvements on the Fair Association property. One is to control the drainage that comes off that property and onto the 17th Street right of way, as we'll have new sidewalk on that north side of 17th Street. Who felt it was important to try to pick up the water before it crosses the sidewalk, just to prevent issues with freeze thaw and water draining over the sidewalk and that kind of thing. And the second item was that the Fair Association property was under a conditional use permit from 2016, back when the horse barn was built, that they were to do some paving on that site within 5 years, which would have been sometime at the end of this year. So the improvements that are proposed here along that north line of 17th Street, south side of the Fair Association property would be storm sewer, some catch basins, curb and gutter, some base, gravel base, and then asphalt paving, and then the fencing changes that would be needed to accommodate those, that construction. The paving would end up being a strip roughly 30 feet wide along the south side of the site. And the reason that 30-foot strip was shown, and if you look in this aerial, there is some paving along the hockey building now, and then some gravel between that existing paving and the fence. If we were to just pave up to this existing paving down to the fence, that's about a 27-foot wide strip. For lack of anything better, we just carried that same width all the way across the property, and that's what our cost estimating is based on, and that's the color you see here showing that new paving, roughly 30 feet of property. So the second scenario here that we're showing in green would be additional paving to get to meet the conditions of that 2016 conditional use permit. Now the cost estimates for both of those areas, the fairgrounds, 27 feet or so north paving, $95,000. And again, that covers the storm sewer, catch basins, curb and gutter, grading and base, and then the asphalt paving and fencing. I think it included new fencing rather than trying to remove and reset old fence. The area in green here had a price tag on it of about, or a cost estimate of about $88,000. So in discussing the conditional use permit requirement with Josh and his staff, we felt that it may not be necessary to do that much as part of this project. That could be done at another time. And there may be some reasons to update that conditional use permit as things have probably changed in the last 5 years. And we've heard of some other possible improvements that might be looked at in this area. So we felt maybe it's not necessary to go that far off the 17th Street project with these improvements. The purpose of bringing this forward tonight is that this additional work is not part of the project budget. And we are at a point where we'd like to move forward with construction plans and bidding documents, and like your approval to include this work in the city bid package, and then recover whatever costs or the Fair Association costs through the special assessment. So at some point then we would need a budget resolution to add this work into the project. But my recommendation would be let's wait till the bids come in, just in case there's any other unforeseen cost increases or changes, or maybe we have very favorable bids and we don't need as much as the $95,000 cost estimate to cover the issue. As far as recovering the costs from the Fair Association, our proposal would be that we would treat this like any other special assessment property. Even though it's not common for us to do work on the private property side and assess it to the property, this is seems like a situation where it might be warranted. An assessment of this size would have a 20-year payback based on our municipal code. So whatever the final amounts would be payable over a 20-year period. And there's some interest that would be on that, just like assessment. So what staff is recommending tonight is that these improvements along the south 30 feet of the Fair Association property be included in the 17th Street project. Our estimate is at 95,000 for that, but the actual cost would be determined once bids come in, and then those costs would be recovered through the special assessment process.
Motion? Motion by Mr. Rosendick, second. Okay, thank you. Mr. Fisher?
Thank you. I guess I just have some questions. Sure. First, with the conditional use permit, you said that was 5 years. Does the city, I don't know if this is the right term, but essentially kind of keep tabs on these conditional use permits to make sure that they are being met?
Yeah, we generally do. We haven't had the best tracking system years ago, but we are on top of it now. We've got a spreadsheet that we keep track of when conditional use gets approved. Plan Commission actually does have options to extend the implementation of it over a number of years. So our typical conditional use permit is you have to start it within a year and complete the project within 2 years. When this project came up, we thought 17th Street would be done by now. So we gave them 5 years to really have time to work it out. The other comment on that conditional use permit, there is supposed to be a 10-foot strip of landscaping that's supposed to be between the road and the parking lot. That doesn't really fit with this design. So they will have to go back to Plan Commission to get approval for modification of that conditional use. But yes, we do track it. This one did kind of, some of the early parts of it, we probably could have caught earlier than this, but we did give time because we did want to tie that in with the 17th Street project. But as you all know, that project kept getting moved back further and further, so.
Okay. And then, I mean, obviously we don't know what the full amount is going to be, but whatever that is, it's going to be broken down into 20 years. What happens if, for some reason, the Fair Association can't pay one? Because there have been times where the fair has had financial hardships, because of weather, because of low attendance. What happens in that situation? They can't pay one.
Go ahead, Dan.
It's a good question. For a normal or typical property owner, assessment is paid at the time your property taxes are paid. And so if you're not paying in full, then you will be shown as a delinquency in property tax.
Yet they're nonprofit.
But they're not paying property taxes. So it's a fair question, but I don't know the answer. So I would have to find out.
Yeah, I would like to know that. I don't think it's necessarily going to keep me from making a decision tonight, because I do think what you're trying to do here and accomplish is wise. Like, let's get the bids, see what they come back with, and then we can make a budget, approve a budget resolution later. But I do think we need to be fiscally responsible and think through all the possible, alternatives. For example, 1 year, what happened? So if you could bring that back at some point, I would appreciate that information. Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Varsho?
Our association owns land, or the city owns.
The Fair Association owns the land. I'm not sure who owns the building, especially the Hockey Association. If they own the building. The city does not own any of the buildings or any of the property. Not on this particular parcel. This parcel, let me go.
This is where the art is.
Correct.
Building.
Right.
City don't.
That is correct.
Go ahead, Adam. If you would, Mr. Varsho, is it okay? He's got a question.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I just have some background there. So Dan is right, that parcel, so there's actually 3 horse barns, a horse arena, and the hockey building is all owned by the Fair Association. All the rest of the property is owned by the city, but that parcel is Fair Association. I believe the hockey building, it's a 100-year lease, I believe.
Yeah.
But it's owned by, I believe the property is owned by the city, and the Hockey Association pays a lease for.
Anybody else? Mr. Rosen, did you have a puzzled look on your face like you? Those are good comments. Dan?
Yeah, let me just maybe add on to this. So my thinking is that, if we have your direction to include this in the bid, that doesn't necessarily mean we have to build it this way. We would have one more shot at it once we get the bid numbers in and know if our estimate was accurate, have an answer to the questions you just asked about the ability to pay or not pay in those future years. Because what I didn't mention, I should have, is that this 95,000 is the estimate for the work on the Fair Association property. As a property owner, they'd also have an assessment for the street improvement sidewalk going in. And that, I think Tom had an estimate of the 50 to 60,000 range. So if you add both of those together, it's a fairly large number, of course, say in round numbers, 150,000, and over 20 years, that'd be $7,500 a year that they would have to come up with to pay that off. And maybe that's problematic, but I guess what I would like to do is get us through the bid process to see how that, what the actual numbers were, and then make some decisions.
Is everybody comfortable with that? Yeah.
They're okay. They've got also like. Last year's.
Yeah.
That's good. But this year was usual. The life types. Yeah, good's not great. I would just. Okay.
Okay, are we comfortable with approving this then? And then getting that information? Okay, I'll call for the vote. All in favor, say aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Dan. Number 9, approve 2022 fee schedule adjustments presented by Dan Connect, Director of
We
Public.
have one more ahead of.
I've lost one? Oh, sure, we sure do. I saw 17th Street there. Approve final plat for East 17th Street reconstruction presented by Dan. Go ahead, Dan.
Thank you. So a month ago, Tom presented the plans for 17th Street. We didn't ask you to take any action yet because we were still working out some details. Essentially what you saw then hasn't changed in the first block from Maple to Cedar. If you recall, we made a change there to move the sidewalk 3 feet off of that north property line, so there was a little more room for those shorter driveways along the north side. Similarly, on the east end between Vine and Each Avenue, nothing has changed from what you had seen 4 weeks ago. But we did make some changes in this section between Cedar and Vine. And if you remember, we talked about conflict with the utility lines, the overhead electric lines, where sidewalk location was going to require the poles to be moved. And our normal sidewalk location is on the property or on the right-of-way line. The poles would have had to move closer to the road, and there would have been a fairly expensive move for Marshfield Utilities. Engineering staff has worked with utility staff and come up with a compromise solution here, if you want to call it that, where the sidewalk would be 3 feet south of the property line, similarly in a similar location as that western block between Cedar and Maple. And that would allow the poles to move north rather than south, which would be an easier move for the utility. And the poles would then be located between the sidewalk and the fence for the most part along the Fair Association property. And they were very pleased with that option. It minimized the number of poles that had to be moved and should reduce their cost and the time involved in that relocation. So I'm happy to say the staff worked great together to figure out a solution on this that meets both needs. We still end up with a fairly decent terrace. The grass area between the sidewalk and the curb will be 6.5 feet, really standard width that we've got in a lot of other areas. So with that, tonight we are asking for your approval of these plans and then authorize going up.
Motion, Mr. Fisher, second by Mr. Barshall. Question? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Okay, now let's go to the number 9, approved 2022 fee schedule adjustments presented by Dan.
Thank you. Engineering fees have not been updated every year. It's been a couple of years since we've updated them, and so there's several changes here that Tom and his staff have worked on, and I just wanted to go through those briefly so you understand how we're proposing some changes here. So the first one has to do with driveway permits. We've implemented an online permitting system similar to what Development Services has for their building permits, and it's gone well. We're going to expand that with some of the permits we're talking about tonight. But on our driveway permits, we're kind of boiling it down to 2 different fees. One, if there's just an office review of the driveway, looking at setbacks and locations and that type of thing, the $20 fee. If we have to go out and stake anything or do any field surveying, engineering, culvert location or a driveway cut, then there'd be a $50 fee to try to cover our time to make a site visit for that permit. Honestly, the $50 fee probably doesn't cover all of our site time, but that was kind of the general thinking, is to get closer to that level of fee permit. On the culvert permits, when we have a new driveway installation, city normally installs those culverts and puts gravel over the top of them, and then the property owner pays for that surface as they pave their driveway. And they have a 1-year time period from when a new development happens to pave their hard surface driveway. So the city would just be covering the cost of the gravel. Property owner pays for the culvert, and they would be billed for that. So when you see here that there's a permit fee of $50 plus actual cost, that actual cost of the culvert. On culvert replacements, this is maybe the biggest change you would see here, number 3, under culvert replacement. We would have a $50 fee for that. But then if we have a driveway that's a gravel driveway, we'd like to pave that driveway as part of this culvert replacement process. Several years ago, we implemented the policy that on our mill in place or any street reconstruction projects, gravel driveways automatically get paved, and then they get specially assessed the property. Trying to reduce those instances where we have washouts and gravel getting into our culvert, to have to go back and clean things up after a major storm like we had back in August. So the way this permit would work, there'd be a $50 fee for the culvert permit. But then once we do the work, cut the culvert and get it paved, then there would be a follow-up invoice for that. We don't do a lot of those in a given year, probably a handful, 6, 8 of them. Since we've gone to our mill in place program in our residential neighborhoods, most of the time people are happy to wait till we have the full project and get the driveway paved, the culvert replaced, the street work all done one time. And then, have the mess once and then be done with it. Sometimes if you have a culvert that's just can't wait and you have to replace it, then we have a standalone culvert replacement. As I said, not that. Jumping down here to utility construction and excavation in the right of way. We have a little bit different approach on how we want to handle some inspection on utility permits. In the past, we've said that we would charge our actual time if we have to go out and inspect a larger project. And we get a few of these each year. Last year we had a large gas company project, had to spend a fair amount of time inspecting it. A lot of times the inspection is due to excavations in the street. We want to make sure it's compacted, the patching is done correctly, so we'll spend time in the holes in the street. So rather than trying to keep track of how many hours we spend on an inspection, we came up with this idea of let's charge per hole in the roadway, because that's really where we're spending our time. And then it's going to be easier to track. Even after the fact, you can go back out and see, yep, there's 5 patches in here, and it's so much patch, this is what the charge is. And that is gonna be $75 per hole in the road, up to 5 max. So thinking is if we're doing a bunch of them, the cost per hole should be less, and at 5, we've probably hit our max. Where this will come into play is the water department doing all their lead service replacements, quite a few holes in the road. And past year, we've tried to keep track of time and bill, but it's very difficult project so far. So I thought this might be an easier way to charge for that inspection. There's a few other smaller changes in the proposed fees, but those are the main ones I wanted to see. Any question?
Motion, anybody want to make the motion to approve the fees? And then Mr. Rosendich? I'll second that. Okay, Mr. Rosendich, go ahead.
Thank you. How do these fees compare to other communities around here? Meaning Stevens Point, Rapids?
That's a fair question. I don't know that we have inspect or asked that question, polled any other. I think we're maybe unique in some of our driveway permitting, because we tend to have a lot of ditches and culverts, and that's maybe not as common in some other communities. We could certainly check on the utility permitting. That's a common permit that others have. So I'll make a note to check on that. The process from here is other departments. I know Josh has got some fees going to the Plan Commission. Other departments are updating their fees. The whole package will come through the Finance Committee in 2 weeks. Common Council, so I'll get those answers.
Anybody else? The only comment I got, Dan, on this is if we could update the costs more often, because they are fairly significant percentage-wise. I understand they're legit, but if we could do it more often.
That was exactly where I was going to go. When's the last time that this was updated?
I don't know for sure. I know it has been a number of years, and you're right. It would be good to get into a habit of more frequent updates, smaller.
Yeah, okay. All right, are we ready to vote? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, Dan. Recommended items for future agendas. Motion by Mr. Rosendich to adjourn, second by Mr. Fisher. Thank you, we are adjourned.